Welcome back to another episode of the Changelog. I am
Everyone,
joined, as always, with Daniel. Daniel.
it's me. Hello.
Good to have you back, Daniel.
Me.
Um, where should we start today?
Lots of stuff to cover, but we'll run through it. I think the best place is if we start with some industry news. Always things going on. Um, there are some uh, new things in the e-ink industry we've had some chats about. So maybe you
Hmm.
can take it from there, Victor.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we've seen more and more lately, and it seems like e-ink obviously has been around for a very long time, even from the very early day. Kindles were using e-inks,
Hmm.
e-ink displays. We've seen people doing signage on e-ink for quite some time, but usually for small form factor displays. What you start to see now is both larger form factor e-ink displays, but also color e-ink displays with slightly better refresh rate. And that's pretty cool, actually. I think from a technical perspective, it's pretty interesting. In
Hmm.
particular, if you combine that with, say, solar power or battery powered even devices that can have a long life cycle. I think that's rather interesting. And yeah, I think there's some of it is has been held back historically by trademarks or patents rather
Hmm.
for larger form factor e-ink. So I'm not sure if something has been brewing in the background where they have managed to work around those patents or if they're new entrants on the field. But I believe that was one of the reasons why it was not viable in the past. So, but I haven't
Yeah.
actually dug into that too much. But I've started to see more and more companies doing it.
And I mean, so with e-ink, the one of the main features that's advertised is the low power consumption. Is that really
Well,
the
there's
angle
that.
you guys are coming from, or yeah?
Well, there are a few reasons why e-ink is interesting. I think part of it is obviously the power consumption. That's a given. But contrary to like an LCD screen or an LED screen, uh, you can deploy these in bright sunlight and they're usable. So remember going back to just example of reading on a Kindle by the pool versus reading on an iPad, right? The
Right,
Kindle is far better for that use case, right?
right,
And that holds true for an advertisement screen or some kind of information screen as well. If you have an e-ink screen in bright sunlight, you can actually still use it. So I think that's a really interesting use case.
hmm yeah. I've seen them just like in daily life. I don't. I wouldn't call this a digital sign, but a couple supermarkets have used them for
Yeah,
pricing labels, and
yeah. So there are a few companies doing like dynamic pricing because of these. So because that's the price, you can actually say, hey, the price of milk is higher during rush hour than it is during 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. So that's one of the appeals for these. You can push prices down in real time, more or less. Well, not real time, but near real time to these devices. So that's another cool use case for e-ink actually.
yeah, I forget the exact name, but there's something in economics called like the sticky price or the sticker tag.
Price elasticity.
Yeah, but not that like a sub part of that, which is or a menu cost, I think it's called, and it's literally the like talking about price changes and how they don't go as fast as maybe the market would like it to be because there's a literal cost and just difficulty and hassle in changing the
Yeah,
prices and printing them another menu. But it's cool
yeah,
that with technology, maybe they can be changed dynamically without any intervention at all. So.
yeah.
Uh,
It's pretty nice actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, okay. Nice. Well, and with the e-ink, are there any like particular players that stand out, or is it just kind of an industry wide phenomenon?
I think it's more a trend that I've seen. I haven't dug into the actual individual players too much, to be honest, but it's more like a trend in general in display technology. I think it's interesting. I'm sure if you dig closer, there are probably some people that are more notable than others, but I can't say that I've dug too deep into that. It's more like an observation from a 10,000 foot observation, I guess.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool. Um, Also, in the signage world, of course, we at Screenly are very much part of the Raspberry Pi ecosystem. That
Mm,
was we traced our origins to the Pi Foundation, so big fans of that.
absolutely.
Um, I know they had a big announcement recently. Maybe we can talk about that a bit.
Yeah, so Embedded World happened since we had our last recorded session, and they had a few announcements on at Embedded World. For us, for Screenly, the most interesting thing is they've announced an M2 Hat Plus, they call it, which is addressing some of the pain points that we've had, at least for the Raspberry Pi, which is the SD cards tend to break, right? And I actually, on my podcast, I actually had Ibn Upton on, recorded this week, which will go live in a month or so, where I went in depth speaking about SD card failures and so on. But the interesting part of this is that with this new M2 hat for the Raspberry Pi 5, you can attach an M2 SSD or NVMe drive, I believe, and
Hmm.
that essentially solves much of the problem with the storage reliability issues that you've had on the Raspberry Pi. So we're yet to get our hands on this device and test it. There are some third-party ones as well, even for the Pi 4, I believe. I think it might be worth exploring, but something that we should probably take a look at internally and see how that works out. And
Mhm.
that's,
Uh,
I think that was noteworthy because I can actually address one of the biggest pain points, in my opinion, on the
yeah,
Raspberry
I
Pi.
mean, I think screen reliability is probably the most important feature for any digital signage company. I mean, you can do all these fancy things on the interface and integrations and this and that, but when screens break, that's when it's a real problem because that's when it's very visible. That's when people get pissed off. Like
Oh, I mean,
that's
and
that's
we
when
have.
like the customers or employees are calling the IT team and being like, "Hey, what the hell?" So,
I
um,
mean, we literally have customers that require forklifts to get to their devices. Right.
yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah, yeah. Also, just difficulty in actually accessing it. Yeah,
so
yeah.
reliability is obviously a key feature for us.
And I mean,
So
I know we, at Screenly, obviously the reliability is super key for us, and we've invested a ton of resources in just monitoring. I know we have that uh, office in the U.S. to just do
our
the
QC rig
investigation.
set up in
Yeah.
Atlanta, yeah,
But in a lot of these investigations, the storage and that failing is often the culprit. Um,
correct. And
so
we used the best SD cards on the market, right? We use
right.
SanDisk Extreme, which is, I mean, these SD cards cost half of what the Raspberry Pi cost, essentially, when
Hmm.
you buy them. Like even when you buy them at volume, right? So
Yeah.
they're not cheap, but they are some of the best SD cards in the market. And we settled on that particular model after collaborating pretty extensively with Balena, and they have a lot of testing of
Yeah.
SD cards. We basically came to the same conclusion on the best SD card.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something that we'll explore, and yeah, we do some more exploration when we play with the Pi 5. I think.
Hmm. And I think too, like maybe we can just, yeah, nice. We can just say a couple notes on that too for like maybe non-technical viewers of this. I mean, I think when people think of SD cards, maybe they're thinking of their like some type of digital camera they have. And the concept of like an SD card breaking is a bit foreign and it, is basically foldered as, yeah, it was some issue. Let me take it back to the like electronics store. But with digital signage and like the, you know, rewriting that takes place way more than a camera that may never rewrite anything. Um, uh, it's just a whole different ballgame. So maybe you could say a few words on that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. SD cards have gotten a lot better in the last 5 years.
Hmm.
Initially, I had this conversation with Eben on my podcast again, and they talk about, and he talked about how they test SD cards for them to be approved, and the read and write patterns that are generated from a Raspberry Pi or like a signage player
Mm.
are fundamentally different than the patterns that you see from a camera. Even if you're a professional photographer, you might shoot, I don't know, let's say you shoot 1,000 photos in a given day when you are really pushing your, I don't know, like a few thousand photos in a given day if you are a professional photographer and you're in a studio. Now, that is order of magnitude more than an amateur photographer would shoot. And even that use case of a professional photographer is order of magnitude less wear and tear on the SD card than what a signage device would walk through in a given day, right?
Mm.
And there's this concept of random and sequential write, which also adds in, but that's now we get a bit too technical. But long story short is the behavior is so different from something like a signage player than what you would have in your smartphone for storing photos versus in the camera.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just fundamentally different behavior, really, and that's why it becomes more often than not, both of magnitude, the most common breakage point in a Raspberry Pi based signage player is the SD card.
Yeah. Well, exciting update from the Pi Foundation then. So
yeah, and they also released a new monitor. I'm not sure you guys remember, but they had a monitor they've had quite a while ago.
yeah,
Raspberry Pi monitor, which is I think it's like six. I actually have one behind me, but I think it's a 6-inch monitor or something like that.
something like that.
The new one
It's
is
small.
yeah, it's tiny. The new one is slightly bigger.
Mhm.
So that's also something they announced. None of these products are officially available yet. They were unveiled. They were unveiled on at the Embedded World, but they're not
Mhm.
publicly on a Raspberry Pi website yet. So yeah,
Yeah.
something to look out for.
Well, nice. Well, always things going on that front. So
Mm.
exciting. I will also say in the uh, I would say less so our industry focus, but also in the digital signage general world, there is a new exhibit in Miami for football player Messi. That's apparently digital signage on steroids.
Oh, I
So
see.
yeah, it's I think it just opened a couple weeks ago, or maybe even just a week ago. So I'm Florida based, so I might check that out. So
Yeah,
uh,
sounds
apparently
like
it's one of
a
these like
fun field
super
day.
immersive, crazy experiences, and you know, I don't think they're using e-ink. I'll say that. So. Uh, Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's transition to some news at Screenly. So, of course, we are always taking internal and external feedback to improve our product. With Screenly, we wanted to, of course, work just as well for a small deployment that's maybe just a corner store with one screen. We wanted to work just as well with an enterprise deployment that might have hundreds of screens, uh, internationally. And so,
Thousands.
yeah, I mean, even thousands, right? So, um, so how do we do that? Uh, Especially when at that level where there are hundreds or thousands of screens, um, there are subdivisions within those companies that have different responsibilities, um, uh, different authorizations. Um, it depends on case by case. So we've developed some features um, for that front, and maybe we can talk about them. So one that comes to mind is our shared playlist feature.
Mm.
Victor, maybe you have some words on that.
Yeah, so we just shipped this feature last week, and the shared playlist feature is really a feature geared towards large deployments. So it's a feature that came from customer request, really, where you have a large number of screens spread across a number of teams, and the feature, this shared playlist feature, allows you to share a playlist from a source account or from one team into multiple teams. So a good use case for this is, say, corporate HQ. They manage something that should be displaying on all screens across the entire organization, regardless of what team they are in. So this feature allows corporate to set up a playlist and then share this to other teams. and they can then manage what goes into this playlist. And on the receiving side of that, you can essentially just say, hey, this should be displaying all my screens. And then as soon as corporate makes a change on that central playlist that is shared, it's federated out to all the sub accounts or sub teams or however you set up your teams. And this really solves for a big problem when you managing at scale, because the alternative is that you have to go into every single team and update this playlist for this week's announcement, which is very, very time and labor intensive. In particular, if you have hundreds of teams, it just becomes completely unusable. So this is why we built this feature. It really came from a customer request or several customer requests, really, where we wanted to streamline and make it easy for people to manage content at scale across multiple teams.
Yeah, yeah, or even with some other variations of how these companies had their essentially org structure. I mean, some cases it'd just be file sharing, by email and telling this other team to, hey, upload this into your account, and
Yeah,
things get lost. There's human error. There's version final and version final, really final, and we've all had that, and it just doesn't
yeah,
really work at scale. Takes too much time, and
that's
definitely
right.
solves that. So
That's right.
um, nice. Are there any uh, you know version 2 or further iterations of shared playlists that you envision in the
I,
coming months?
I think the first version really incorporates the feedback we received. Before we shipped the feature, the scope for that request. Will there be an update to this? Potentially. It all really comes down to how people are using it and
Yeah,
if what the feedback is based on that. But I think it covers the use case and the pain point that we initially addressed. But yeah,
yeah,
this is very much an enterprise oriented feature.
nice. Um, all right, and another product announcement is a feature uh, we've heard a lot about and have been toying with, and honestly probably should have done sooner. But we're very happy to have it out in the open, which is our screen notes feature.
Yes.
Um, you know, uh, and again, this is something where we've seen this need become a lot more pointed the larger the screen deployment count
Yeah.
is. So, uh, screen notes, Victor, what is screen notes and why is it useful for Screenly customers?
Yeah. Screen notes really allows you to annotate uh, data about a given screen. It's a markdown based formatting, so that allows you to actually have some structure in there. But the pain point that it solves for is really annotating what a given screen, either where it's located or who you should contact, or it could be things like the asset ID or however you structure your internal IT. So it's a kind of a catch-all for whatever pain points you have internally or how you identify items internally, and that's really where we use it. So we use it internally, for instance, for our QC rig. So we have an office in Atlanta that we mentioned before, where we have, I think it's 20 some screens on a wall. So it's a big wall, a big office space. And we use screen notes to identify a given screen where it's at, right? So we can say, this screen is located on the top row, second screen from the
Mhm.
left. Or you can actually annotate it better, or you could mark down using Markdown to make it even prettier. But that's the kind of use case it's for. You can annotate things like which network switch it's connected to, or who owns this device. If something goes wrong, this is the contact information for this particular person that you should get in touch with, for instance. So there are a lot of use cases for this, but
Yeah.
it's something that we know that we been wanting to add support for quite some time, and now we finally got around to add that feature.
Yeah, and I think too, like when it's a deployment with one screen, like a lot of this information is in the person's head, and
Yeah,
they don't really have to think about it because they know all the weird stuff, right? They know
yeah,
that like this Ethernet cord they found in a drawer and it's a little bit screwy. So like if they, I mean, really, it's just like random weird stuff that's also useful to put in there. So it's again, it's a markdown markdown field that you can really put anything you want in. So,
or it could be like what power circuit is done, right? So if the power goes
yeah,
out, like, oh yeah, we know, oh, to power socket's device, we can just, I don't know, switch this power circuit on or off, or something like that. Or if this goes out, it's expected to go out, or something like that, right?
exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a family of support tickets that we have, which are, hey, new IT guy, we found this black box behind our screen. What's the deal?
Yeah,
And
yeah, exactly.
obviously that has like a ton of like security implications for us, that we need to do some like, intense vetting on they are who they say they are. Um, but if it's a new guy, or even just like a new team, starting from scratch is very difficult. And
Yes,
so I think this feature is going to make a lot of people's lives easier on that front. So
I hope so. Yeah,
nice. So okay. Anything else you want to add on screen notes, or I think that covers it.
I think that covers pretty well, actually.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those features that they're small improvements, but they really add up over time to streamline the whole digital signage process for people.
High impact for sure. Yes.
Yeah. Um, and another thing too is we at Screenly, of course, pride ourselves in being able to display the content that is most important to people, whatever it is and wherever it is. So on that front, uh, one request that we've gotten a lot is YouTube videos. Sometimes it's a great production from our a company's marketing team, and they want to share it with everyone in the company and their customers. So we have improved our support for YouTube videos, and yeah, Victor, give me the background here on YouTube support at Screenly, and what we've done to streamline that process for customers.
Yeah. So like it or not, YouTube has essentially become the default distribution channel for a lot of videos, in particular corporate videos. That's how they share it with a lot of the team members and so on, rather than emailing files over, which is completely understandable because obviously you don't want to email very large files back and forth. So it's become a very normal or a very common distribution channel for videos. And we always supported YouTube videos, or at least in recent time or recent years, we've supported YouTube videos, but the playback hasn't always been great because, uh, yeah, it's a web page and all that, and it can look kind of funny on the screen. Now, what we've done is to improve this playback. So when you now add a YouTube video, it will display in full screen as one would expect it to do, rather than in a simple an interface where you would have to interact with it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's the big improvement here, and I think a lot of our customers will be very happy about this. It's something that we've had a lot of feature requests for over the years. So now we're
Mm-hmm.
finally getting around to improve this. We allocated some resources towards this, and I believe that's going to be good for our users. And I believe in the coming week we'll also improve Vimeo support as well as part of this video experience. So again, much like the screen notes, kind of relatively low effort but really high reward for our end users, and that's our job, is to make our customers happy. So we
Yeah,
are listening and we're improving based on your feedback.
and for existing customers, what's the actual workflow for those YouTube videos? Is it just a web asset?
Right. So if you already uploaded a YouTube video, you have to do it again, essentially. So upload it
Mhm.
again, and then we can reprocess it. It will not work for existing YouTube videos, so you have to go back and redo it again. So if you already have YouTube videos, you just add it again as an asset, and that will take care of the process. So there's no migration in place here.
Nice. Okay. And then if you haven't heard about our push for Screenly Edge apps, you haven't been listening to our announcements of any kind. So, of course, that's our recent push to have a much more robust app store that can be used by point and click users who really just want to get something and go, or even developers who want to make some line by line customizations. Um, so what we're trying to do at Screenly and what we've been doing is building out a full library of ready to go apps that can also serve as a playground environment as well for those who want to customize further. On that front, we've added a couple of new Edge apps since our last changelog call. One of them, our simple message Edge app. I think it's pretty self-contained in the title, but
Yes.
anything you want to say about that, or what should people know about our new simple message Edge app, Victor?
It's a very, very simple Edge app. All it really does, it takes two inputs. It's a header and a body. And the design for that is really just allow users to display a message on the screen that can be quickly modified and edited directly in the web interface. So if you say hello world and then a body, you can tweak this and save it, and that would automatically be pushed out to your screens. So it's just
Yeah.
a really simple way to communicate with customers. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this is really just the first stepping stone towards a bigger, more grandiose strategy around edge apps, and watch the space, because we're going to add a lot more interesting functionalities around this. But it really showcases just the functionality that we have with edge apps, and we have a long list of new applications that we are pushing. So that's, yeah, keep on the lookout for what we're releasing. We are
Mm-hmm.
shipping new edge apps almost every week now, and
Yeah.
our catalog is just getting bigger and bigger, and
Yeah.
we are doing an overhaul on the existing one as well to make them more consistent with our look and feel, so they are more more consistent simply.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can add more functionalities for customization and so on further down the road. But yeah, it's a
Yeah.
big strategic effort on our end to focus on this.
And I mean, for the simple, message Edge app, I mean, it is a simple message, but the process that people would have to do prior to this wasn't so simple. I mean, it would be totally doable, but several steps. I mean, they'd have to go into some photo editing tool, maybe like a Canva or something on their desktop. Write the message, download it, fiddle with the sizing and resolution issues, upload it as a photo, and okay. And then every time that message changed, they'd have to redo that whole process.
That's right.
When if they really just wanted to say, hey, meeting changed from 3 to 3:30, and put that in a conference room screen so people know, that was a huge hassle and not really time effective either. So this, solves that feature where people just need to say, hey, let's let people know this thing.
That's right. Yes, we're just dipping our toes in the water here with these dynamic messages. There are a lot more on the roadmap that are more advanced, but I think this still has utility for some use cases. But yeah, like I said, watch the space. We're going to be announcing more of these going forward. Some really exciting ones that actually are pretty close to being finished around edge apps. But yeah, like I said, we're not going to premature announce them, but we have some pretty cool stuff in the roadmap on the roadmap.
Sure. And last thing too, so we also recently launched a Edge app for our iframe.
Yes.
And that has been a topic internally and among customers for a while, because if adding a message on an editing platform was a hassle, then definitely making a web page to support an iframe that was certainly a hassle. So Screenly has a iframe Edge app. Victor, tell us more about that.
Right. So Edge app for iframe is, I mean, if you're familiar with iframes, it's kind of self-explanatory. If you're not familiar with iframes, it's essentially a way to embed a website into another website, and it's used fairly commonly across embedded snippets. So if you want to embed a snippet of, say, a calendar or something along those lines onto another web page, the common method to doing so is to use iframe. The edge app iframe allows you to do this very easily. So instead of having to create that page, as you said before, copy and paste a snippet in, you provide as a setting with your edge app, and we do some magic in the background to improve the experience as well, to make sure that it's full screen and make sure it looks good on your screen. Yeah, that's basically how the edge app iframe works. It's not crazy complicated from a technical perspective, but it adds a lot of utility for people that do want to enable or display content that is packaged up as an iframe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, tons of third-party tools have this as a display option, and
Yes.
we of course want to support that for our customers. So now it is quick and easy, and that's what we
Amazing.
aim to do. So, all right. Well, Victor, I mean, that's really it on the notes I have. I think that covers it for the changelog. Of course, to those listening, I think this is our third or fourth episode. Third, maybe. Third. Yeah, so we're going to be pushing this content out every month. Really just as a hello to our customer base, and just a opportunity to chat about things going on. So hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Perfect. Thank you, Daniel. Have a
Thanks,
good one.
Victor. See ya.
Cheers. Bye.